Welcome back everyone to a new video. Today we're going to be getting the Platinum Trophy on Hollow Knight Silksong. Silksong is a sequel to 2017's Hollow Knight, and this time around you play as Hornet instead of her stepbro the Knight. This long-awaited Metroidvania has 34 trophies including the Platinum, over 100 collectibles, technically has a few missable trophies tied to endings, and requires speedruns, so let's get into it. Quick disclaimer, I still don't really understand the story, so I'll do my best here, but if you're curious, there are some great videos out there that go in depth on what's really going on. To start things off, following the events of the first game, Hornet is captured and taken prisoner to Farloom, the game's setting where fortunately she is able to make a quick escape to start Act 1. After gaining control of her, I made my way through the first area, Mossholm, where I fought the tutorial boss, Moss Mother, and I made quick work of her. After the fight, I followed the path and found the chapel maid, who basically tells Hornet that it's dangerous for the pilgrims who travel in Farloom, and at the summit there is the chapel for the faithful. Our main quest updates to go to the Citadel, and we proceed onward, where I found the first little settlement on our pilgrimage, Bone Bottom, where I'm introduced to the first shop and main currency of the game, rosary beads. I took a look at the shopkeeper's inventory and saw that they sold a mask shard. Masks are Hornet's HP, and each time you collect 4, she gets another mask, with a trophy being earned at the first 4 and another for collecting all 20 in the game. Being the broke little bug that I was, I couldn't buy anything, so seeing that my only path was to the right, I continued on into the Marrow, where I found the greatest song of the year, played by the one and only Sherma. Soon after, in the side room of the same area, I found my first tool and got my first trophy. Tools replace charms this go around and come in 3 colors: red, blue, and yellow, with red being usable damage dealing items, yellow being mostly utility, and blue being mostly passive buffs, and they are slotted into your crest, but more on that later. Not too long after, I started seeing these rings on the floor, and followed them to find another NPC named Chakra. Chakra would be the cartographer this go around, and would appear in most new areas and sell maps. I would eventually need to acquire a map of every area for a trophy. I bought a compass and a quill, which allowed the map to update where I've been, and show my location, and continue fighting and exploring until I found my first silk skill, Silk Spear, that let me progress on. And I got another trophy. Quite similar to Hollow Knight's system, Silk is the resource that you gain from attacking enemies, and is used to both heal and use skills, and is tracked on the spool under Hornet's masks. This is increased by collecting 2 spool fragments at a time found throughout Farloom, and I would get a trophy for collecting all of them as well. Right around where I got Silk Spear, I found the Moss Druid, who gave me a wish to find 3 moss berries. Wishes in Silksong are just quests, but I guess it's a better way of putting it. Anyways, I already had the 3 moss berries from exploring, so I turned it in right away and popped the trophy for completing my first wish. Eventually I found the first actual boss, the Bell Beast. The fight wasn't too bad, but during the second half, it starts dropping bells from the ceiling, and it can get chaotic at first, but once I beat her, I got something called a Silk Heart, which I needed 3 of for a trophy later on, and unlocked her as a fast travel around Farloom. After some more exploring in a big cavern, I found a caravan of fleas where the flea master tasked me with finding all of the missing fleas scattered about. Being another collectible, this would net 2 trophies, one for finding half of them, and another for finding all 30. Moving on to the next area, I began exploring Deep Docks, and I really enjoyed this one. It was bright and the enemies were pretty cool, and I was able to farm some rosaries to spend in the shop. I explored as much of the area as I could until I found the dash ability, and the game's movement definitely took a turn for the better. Not long after, I found a recurring character, Lace, who challenges Hornet to a fight. She fights a lot like Hornet, and her parries are punishing, but after giving her a lava bath, she jumps away, and I got a trophy for beating her, giving me access to the Farfields. Farfields was an area that I struggled to navigate as there were a few diverging paths that eventually led to a large corridor with platforms that I couldn't access without another ability. But deep in there I found the seamstress who gave me a wish and was rewarded with the drifter's cloak upon completion. This would get me out of the area and onto the next, but on the way out I was met with the fourth chorus. Overall the fight was really easy. I jumped over its arms and smacked its head over and over until it went down and I was up and out into the next area. I really wish I could say that I enjoyed this next map, but I really struggled here. The enemies were much harder as half of it was crows that flew around everywhere, which made them much harder to hit, and I owe a lot of deaths to them. I did, however, meet New here, whatever she's supposed to be, a snail I guess, and got the Hunter's Journal and a wish to defeat 100 different types of bugs for a trophy. Soon after, I found the Chapel of the Reaper, and after scraping by some scissors, received the Reaper's Crest. Crests are the base of your loadout and change the colors of tool slots and how Hornet attacks. Thankfully, this one changed the downward slash to how it was in the first game instead of being diagonal, as I couldn't get used to it and kept dying when I tried to use it. In the next zone below, I found the boss of the area, Morwing, and got my ass kicked. Not gonna lie, this fight took me a lot longer than I would like to admit, like an hour. But once I beat it, I progressed onward into a glorious cutscene of bugs cut up in silk and a new objective to free the citizens of Belheart, so I set out to do just that. My journey took me into Shellwood. Shellwood was an interesting area full of twists and turns, and is also where the parkour starts to ramp up in difficulty a little bit. There wasn't too much going on here at first, but I did manage to find the 4th mask shard for a trophy in a side room and got another mask of health. At the top of the area was the boss fight with Sister Splinter, and she was one of the easier ones, and I took her down from the ceiling without too much trouble. Right after the fight, I got access to the wall cling ability, which let Hornet jump off walls, so that was fun. Finishing up the quest in Belheart took me above the town where I discovered Widow was the one who trapped everyone in her silk. Insert joke here. She was a little bit harder to beat, and I had to learn her mechanics before I was able to take her down. Or not, because she had a second phase. But once I figured out how to get past all the jingle bells from hell, she taught me how to play a nice tune on my needle to read enemies' thoughts and open special doors. After this, I wandered aimlessly for a while, not knowing where to go next, until I eventually found the blasted steps above Shellwood. There wasn't too much going on here, other than a ton of dune worms trying to eat me the whole time, but once I got to the top, I found a door to the Citadel. When I tried to open it though, I was greeted by the last judge. I don't know about you, but when she enters, it kind of sounds like she says diarrhea, and I heard this like 10 times, so it was kind of enjoyable. Anyways, after flushing her, the door opened into the Citadel, and in goes Hornet to start Act 2. Yeah, so it didn't go as planned, and I had to climb out of the underworks, and then I ran into Lace again, but this time she just made more enemies spawn everywhere with silk. Then I got lost again because this shit was a maze without a map. I did find the Ventrica system though, which is the fast travel system for the Citadel, so that was pretty cool because finding all of them would unlock a trophy later on. Roaming around the Citadel and collecting rosaries and defeating enemies was fun and all, but I wasn't making any real progress and kept finding dead ends and items I couldn't reach. That is until I found my favorite boss in the game, the Cogwork Dancers. The mechanics were really cool as there are 2 sentinels that move about the arena in different directions. Each phase they change speeds, and I had a great time with this one. After beating them, I spoke with these 3 beings here and was tasked with finding 3 melodies to create a song. Honestly, I'm not too sure what's going on with this, but it was for the main objective. I had a couple of paths open up now, and I chose to go downward. Going downward was hell, but eventually I made my way to the other side of the underworks where I picked up the clawline ability. This one was really cool because it let Hornet throw her needle outwards and pull herself towards it. After roaming around the maps for a few hours, picking up collectibles and doing wishes, I decided to go for one of the melodies to progress the story. On the way to the first one, I found the boss Trobio, and I really struggled with him. There was a lot going on in the arena with projectiles, and I couldn't grasp the concept of not taking damage when he spun across the stage. I died many times here, but I finally beat him, and he still put on quite a show. After his arena, I made my way down and around and picked up an item I was able to give to some giant centipede thing, who then gave me the first melody. The second melody I got from a sick dude just chilling in his bed. Nothing too much here, except I had to go through some platforming and a pretty long arena fight to get here. Over near here though, by the high halls, I found a pathway to the left and decided to explore it. I found the slab, which was a giant prison, and most of the doors were locked, but I did find a bench and another path that led out to Mount Fae and Chakra. I wasn't sure I was supposed to be here because the cold was taking away my masks, but I kept going on and upwards through some very difficult platforming sections. At the top, I was given the Fae Down cloak from a giant bird, which gave Hornet double jump and protection from the cold. This was huge and unlocked the ability to get the majority of the collectibles in the game. From there, I went back to the Citadel to get the last melody, and after some more difficult platforming that I definitely didn't die multiple times trying to do, I came to a pillar puzzle. Solving it and playing the needle in gave me the last piece I needed and a trophy for gathering all three. I took these back to the three figures, and they unlocked an elevator that led me to another fight with Lace in an area known as the Cradle. And this time she was much more difficult. She whooped my ass for a while as she was much faster this time and learned some new moves. She was very timely with blocks and parries and gave very little room to heal. Like any good boss fight, I just had to die repeatedly and learn her moveset before beating her and earning another trophy. Now I knew at this point I was getting close to the last boss of Act 2, so I went to mop up all the collectibles that I could. I started back in Mossholm and discovered a door that I could open with the needle in. There in Weavenest Atla, I found Eva, who gives upgrades to crests based on how many memory lockets Hornet's used. Which was pretty cool because it allows Hornet to equip more tools, but we'll come back to her in a minute. From here I just used a map of the game and went from area to area and cleared out every collectible that I had access to. There's a few that are unobtainable until later in the game, but the majority are available now, and I made sure while in Greymoor to talk to New and turn in the wish for defeating 100 different enemies in the Hunter's Journal for another trophy. After a long while of mindless collecting and checking off items in corners, I found the last Ventrica system I needed in an area called Memoriam, so that was pretty cool, and the last Beast Fast Travel Station in the Putrefied Ducks. I saved my least favorite area, Biowater, for last, and here I found the last of the fleas and the Twisted Bud, which I needed for one of the endings. Biowater absolutely sucked, because the water is infested with little worms called muck maggots, and touching them drains silk and you have to spend a heal to get them off, and it also has one of the worst runbacks for a boss fight in the entire game. I mean, just look at this. This is the closest bench, and there's a ton of water. I died a ton on this boss too, but maybe I'm just bad. Finishing up the map and completing all the wishes that I could, I finally collected all the silk hearts I mentioned before and earned another trophy, and I was able to get all the spool fragments too. I also collected all of the fleas and gave them a permanent home in Fleetopia. I really knocked a ton of trophies out here. Now I was ready to fight the final Act 2 boss. I had 3 ending trophies to knock out here, and I really wanted to get the hardest done first. I went back to Shellwood and gave the Twisted Bud to Greyroot and became cursed, which means that Hornet cannot heal or use any items or skills. Back up at the Cradle, the fight with Grandmother Silk wasn't too bad. It took about 30 minutes before I was able to beat her without doing any of the things I just mentioned, and once I did, the trophy popped for beating her while cursed, the credits rolled, and it dropped me right before the fight. Well, alright. So I carried on and beat her again normally for another trophy for the basic ending for simply binding Grandmother Silk. The final time that I would beat her would carry me to Act 3 since it was the canon ending, but I first had to go to the caretaker at Songclave and accept a wish to build the soul snare. Once done, I beat her again and got this cutscene in the last trophy of Act 2. Hornet eventually makes her way back to the caregiver, where it's revealed that the gang are actually snail shamans and the trap really didn't work as planned, but ruin will come to Farloom if nothing is done. Hornet vows to fix this and sets off to see what exactly is going on. This takes her to the deep docks, where we ride a bell down through the lava down into the abyss. Deep in the abyss, I found a pool of void water and a ghostly form of Lace who taunts Hornet by saying that nothing can be done and all bugs will be destroyed. I guess Hornet somehow knows that Grandmother Silk is down there. I'm not really sure how though. You see, as far as I understand it, the goal of the Soul Snare was to trap Grandmother Silk in the void, Hollow Knight reference. And since Lace ended up getting taken with her, she lived and the void gained her powers. Since Grandmother Silk was already a baddie and controlling most of the enemies with her silk, now the enemies are being controlled by the void, with the void threatening to destroy Farloom. But moving on from here, I find the new ability called Silk Soar that lets Hornet shoot upwards in the sky like a rocket, and I use it to escape from the abyss and went back to the Snail Shamans, where Hornet determines that in order to traverse the void waters, she would need the Everbloom flower from her memories, and the Shamans would need to use a spell requiring 3 strong warrior souls to make it work. The first one I went to was by far the hardest fight in the game for me. Scarsinger Carmelita had a ton of health and seemed to attack randomly, and there wasn't a good chance to heal anywhere in the arena except at the very top, and she could still jump up there at times and do damage. I fought her for over 3 hours before I finally managed to pull off the win and move on to the rest of the souls. The other 2 fights weren't too hard, and I took out Nihilith and Crust King Kahan without too much trouble, and returned to the Snail Shamans, where they sent Hornet on a trip through her memories in hopes of finding the flower. When she returned, she was holding it, and I was holding a new trophy.
Which thing?
The Everbloom.
Red memory? Yeah.
With the main objective now being updated to return to the Abyss to face Lace once more, I decided to finish off the rest of what I could to get 100% before beating the game. I started off by using Hornet's new ability to soar above the Shamans to get the Shaman Crest deep within, which gave the trophy for getting all of those. Now, since I had gotten all of the crests, I used all of the memory lockets I had collected on them to increase tool slots and return to Eva. Since I had used 20, Eva lets Hornet bind her for a trophy, which is pretty cool because now Hornet refills silk when she sits at a bench. I then found a wish that led me back to Mount Fae to a fight with the Penstress, and after a pretty cool fight, she gave me the last tool, popping the trophy for collecting all of them. Continuing on with wishes, I fought a hunter, and after beating him and turning in the wish, I got the last mask shard and the trophy for collecting all of them in the game. Next, I went back to where I fought Grandmother Silk in Act 2 and picked up the last silk skill from her dismembered arm, popping up the trophy for collecting all of those. I then took a trip back to the Fleas to pick up a wish in the top of the zone that gave riddles to find a mushroom located in random spots throughout Farloom, and after finding almost all of them, the last one was in a pretty hard to reach spot that I hadn't been before, but I had something else to do first. Remember the hunter's journal that New gave me? Well, it's been tracking every enemy that Hornet has defeated and how many of each, and now I had to completely fill it out for the Hunter's Memento. And even after visiting every area of the map, I was still missing a solid chunk, so I spent a few hours hunting when I found the new area off to the side of Greymoor that I guess I couldn't access until now. I went inside and into Verdania, picked up a map for the Cartographer trophy for all maps, and got lots of journal entries in there. After that, I was down to the last 3. And as it turns out, the last 3 entries I needed in the last mushroom were in the same place, the surface. Now, the path to the surface was no easy task, as it's basically this game's version of the Path of Pain, just without saw blades, and I died a handful of times on the way up. But on the path, I found 2 of the bugs I needed, and once I got to the top, I found the last mushroom to complete the wish. And on the surface, I found the last bug to complete the journal. Returning to New and talking with it, I was returned with the trophy for receiving the Hunter's Memento as well. Now with everything done, I was ready to take on the end of the game, so I carried back down to the Abyss again, and using the flower to protect herself from the Void Waters, Hornet leapt down to save Farloom and fight the final boss, which turned out to be Lace again, this time lost. I'm sure you can guess though that it was much harder than the other 2 though. But I still think Carmelita was harder since this Lace wasn't as random with her attacks. Her second phase was kind of crazy though, no lie, with everything going on from the ground and how gray everything was. Once I did finally manage to beat her though, through all the chaos, Hornet grabs Lace and leaps through the Void Waters where they're saved by an old friend. Grandmother Silk succumbs to her wounds and the void disperses, giving me the trophy for beating Lost Lace and saving Farloom. Sister of the Void. The next cutscene then plays of the Mushroom Man blasting off and the trophy popping for granting his wish. And grant the Herald's wish, passing of the... After the credits roll, I get the trophy for 100% completion and beating the game. 100% complete. Alrighty, with everything else done in the game, on just one playthrough, I have 2 speedrun trophies left. To start this off, I found a great guide that showed exactly where to go, and I set off to beat Grandmother Silk in under 5 hours. I didn't really think this one would be the harder of the 2, but boy was I wrong. I've never done a speedrun before, so being a virgin, I just tried my best, and I had a pretty good time going, managing to make it past the first few Act 1 bosses and into Act 2 without any trouble and only a few deaths, right before the 2-hour mark. Thankfully, you can restore your save from key story points at the main menu, because I kept losing the Trobio when I went to get one of the melodies, and I took a wrong path when I went to get the Clawline ability. But lessons learned, and I managed to pull it off with a time of 4 hours and 5 minutes. No world record, but it'll do. Give it to me. Yes. Yay. Finally, on to the last one of the grind, 100% in under 30 hours. I used the save from the 5-hour speed run and immediately went and got double jump and just went to town collecting everything available in Act 2. Thankfully for 100%, you don't have to complete the journal again, and there are a few wishes and bosses that can be skipped in Act 3. I just went as fast as possible and didn't really think about the time. I just tried not to be wasteful. A helpful tip I'm sure some of you know, but if you save and quit to the menu and then reload into the game, it will respawn you at the last bench you rested at, so I used this frequently to not waste time running back through the map. I didn't really struggle with any fights this go around since I had over 80 hours played by this point, so Carmelita only took me a few attempts, and before I knew it, I was back at the Lost Lace fight. After a few tries, I took her down, and after watching the credits roll, I was greeted with a final time of 23 hours and 9 minutes for 100% under 30 hours and the Platinum Trophy. Overall, it took me about 92 hours to get this across 2 playthroughs, and I would rate it an 8 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. Some of the boss fights are really hard at times, and while there are tools that make it easier in some situations, you still have to get good since they're speedruns. This is the first video I've made like this, and I plan on making more in the future, so if you enjoyed, please be sure to let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.